I was finalizing the last entry on my guest roster when Mother's message arrived. Your sister's ceremony is the family's focus. We cannot attend yours. No punctuation for emotion, no hesitation, just conclusive. It struck harder than anticipated, like someone quietly securing a door from the opposite side. I didn't protest. I simply gazed at the blinking cursor, typed, "That's fine," and shut the laptop. 7 days later, while they were preparing for Maya's grand occasion, the world discovered something they never bothered to inquire about. My ceremony was already occurring beneath the cypress trees of my own 6 million estate in Provence. And when the images emerged, the silence from home conveyed everything. Before I share how it all transpired, tap like and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. Because sometimes the people who were meant to appear for us never do. When people ask what growing up in our household was like, I never know where to begin. From the exterior, we appeared flawless. Holiday cards in coordinated attire, expressions broad enough to convince anyone we were connected. But if you observed long enough, you'd recognize the pattern. Every narrative, every celebration somehow circled back to my younger sister, Maya. She was the family's center. I was the silent foundation, maintaining the whole system stable. I used to think it was typical, how Mother's expression brightened every time Maya entered a space, how Father boasted about her performance awards at every meal. When I returned home with academic competition certificates or perfect grades, they'd acknowledge politely and shifted the topic. Mother would say things like, "You're fortunate, Diana. Things just flow easier for your sister." That word fortunate always hurt. It made every hour I'd invested working feel invisible. There's a photo collection somewhere in my parents' living space that tells the whole narrative better than I could. Page after page of Maya spinning in ballet costumes, Maya extinguishing candles, Maya at formal dances. I appear once, perhaps twice, cropped at the margin or half turned away. When I was 16, I found one photograph where I remembered standing right beside her. But in the printed version, my face was absent, literally trimmed out of the frame. Mother said it was to make the arrangement neater. I didn't weep. I just stopped anticipating to be in the picture at all. Grandmother Sophie was the only one who noticed. She used to offer me quiet encouragements during family meals, leaning in close to whisper, "Don't worry, darling. Some people only recognize what's bright." She had a method of expressing things that made you feel acknowledged without needing to explain yourself. My cousin Jennifer, too. She was always the one on birthdays after my parents overlooked. But favoritism doesn't erupt overnight. It seeps in gradually until silence feels safer than confrontation. By the time we were adults, it had become a language in itself. When Maya forgot my university graduation, Mother called it a simple miscommunication. When she borrowed funds and never returned them, Father said she's still discovering her path. So when the ceremony text came through, I wasn't surprised. It just confirmed what I had always understood. I had spent my whole life being the flexible one, the one who adjusted so others could stay comfortable. But that night, as I sat staring at Mother's message, something transformed. For once, I didn't adjust. I looked around my apartment, the soft hum of the appliance, the scent of sandalwood candles I'd lit to calm myself. My ceremony invitations were still stacked neatly on the counter, each one handwritten, sealed in bronze wax. I'd imagined them sitting proudly on my parents' refrigerator. Now I imagined them unopened, discarded for Maya's polished occasion. And yet beneath the pain, there was a strange calm forming. A quiet realization that this was my chance to stop requesting for a seat at their table. 2 days after that message, Maya called like nothing had occurred. Her voice was cheerful, sweet, the kind she used when she wanted something. "Can you believe it?" she said. "The venue we wanted opened up last minute. It's the same weekend as yours, but that's fine, right? You're on the West Coast. We're in Charleston. It's meant to be. Meant to be." She actually said that phrase, like she just quoted a greeting card. For a few seconds, I couldn't even speak. I just listened to the clinking of her jewelry through the device and realized she was waiting for me to congratulate her. "That's wonderful, Maya," I said, keeping my voice even. "Really, perfect timing," she giggled. "I knew you'd understand. You've always been so reasonable." Reasonable. That was my assigned role in our family script. Steady, mature, predictable, the one they could lean on while they indulged her every impulse. The next evening, Mother called. Her voice carried that careful tone she used when she was about to disappoint me, but didn't want to feel guilty about it. "Sweetheart," she began. "About the ceremony dates. Maya's partner's family can only do that weekend. She's very emotional right now, and it would mean so much if you could be flexible." Flexible. Another word that used to define me. I asked quietly, "So you want me to move my ceremony?" Mother hesitated. "We just think it would be easier for everyone. You're so independent, Diana. You'll understand." The irony almost made me laugh. Easier for them, for her. Not once did she ask what it would cost me. "Mother," I said slowly, "you promised you'd be there." She sighed, long and weary, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "It's not about choosing sides. It's just coordination." That word coordination struck harder than anticipated. It was my entire career, the field I'd built a company around. Coordination meant precision, integrity, fairness. But in my family's dictionary, it was just another excuse for betrayal. That night, I called my father. He answered with his usual calm, practical tone. "Dee, you know how your sister gets. If we don't go, she'll take it personally. You've always been the strong one." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. "So you're saying it's my job to understand again?" He didn't answer. I disconnected before I said something I couldn't take back. For a long time, I just sat in the dark. The only sound, the low hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking past midnight. The light from my engagement ring caught the edge of the counter, scattering little reflections across the wall, like fragments of something I'd been trying to hold together too long. That's when it clicked. I realized my family wasn't harsh in loud, obvious ways. Their weapon was omission, leaving me out of pictures, out of conversations, out of priority lists. I'd been trained to interpret silence as affection. Not this time. I closed my laptop, opened my travel bookmarks, and clicked on a listing I'd saved months ago. A stone estate in Provence surrounded by lavender fields. The photos glowed like a dream, golden light on limestone walls. If they wouldn't show up for me, I'd build something they could never ignore. The next morning, I booked a flight to France. No announcement, no family group chat, no dramatic goodbye, just a single decision made in silence. When the plane descended over the hills of Provence, the light was different, softer, almost forgiving. I rented a small vehicle and drove through winding roads lined with plane trees until I reached the estate I'd only seen in pictures. It was older than I'd imagined. Stone walls the color of cream, wooden shutters weathered with age, lavender fields stretching beyond the horizon. The caretaker, an older man named Monsieur Blanc, handed me a ring of keys and said in careful English, "This place waits for someone who appreciates it." For the first time in months, I felt appreciated. Inside, the air smelled of earth and herbs, like a place that remembered every voice that had ever echoed through it. As I walked from room to room, I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a blank canvas, a chance to rebuild my story without anyone editing me out. Over the next few weeks, I poured myself into restoring it. I hired local craftsmen who treated every beam and stone as if it were sacred, the sound of tools and laughter mixed with the hum of cicadas. Every evening I'd sit on the terrace with a notebook, sketching the courtyard for the ceremony. One long stone table under a canopy of wisteria, strings of lanterns overhead. No family table, no seating hierarchy, just one place for everyone who chose to be there. The locals started calling me La Dame Tranquille, the quiet lady. I liked that. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was strategy. When I called my partner and told him my plan, he didn't question it. He just said, "If this is what peace looks like for you, I'm in." And for the first time in my life, I believed someone meant it. A week later, I began sending out new invitations. Not the embossed bronze kind I'd sent before, but simple ivory envelopes with lavender sprigs pressed inside. Handwritten, personal, sincere. The first went to Jennifer, my cousin, who'd never forgotten my birthday. Then to grandmother Sophie, who had always seen through the family's illusions. And one by one replies started coming in. Jennifer called me first. We heard what happened. Aunt Laura told everyone Maya's ceremony was the main occasion. "We're done pretending. Send us the details. We'll be there." Her voice cracked halfway through, not from pity, but from loyalty. By the end of the week, flights were booked. Grandmother messaged, I've missed enough real love in my life. I'll be in Provence, my dear." The group chat they started called itself the True Family Table. Photos of passports, luggage, and laughing emojis filled my device. For the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen, and somewhere between the lavender fields and the smell of fresh lime plaster, I realized this wasn't revenge. This was revelation. The morning of both ceremonies arrived under the same sun. Two worlds unfolding miles apart. In Charleston, the air was heavy with humidity and nerves. The hotel ballroom glimmered under chandeliers, but there was an uneasiness that even the florist couldn't hide. Half the chairs near the front sat empty. Mother stood by the entrance in her violet dress, smiling too wide, pretending not to notice how many familiar faces were missing. Father checked his watch, then his device, then the door again. "Maybe the flights got delayed," Mother whispered, her voice brittle, but no one was coming. Inside, Maya adjusted her veil for the 5th time. Her attendants hovered, whispering, "Where's grandmother? Didn't she always sit in the first row?" Maya's smile wavered. "She must be running late," she said, but her voice cracked. The photographer shifted awkwardly, repositioning the guests to make the room look fuller. "Maybe move everyone forward," he suggested gently. "Sure," Maya said, forcing a laugh, but her hand trembled as she clutched her bouquet. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the same sunlight poured over rolling hills of Provence, catching on silver lavender stems. The estate glowed like a painting, stone walls wrapped in wisteria, lanterns swaying in the breeze. The long table was set beneath the grape canopy, lined with candles, wildflowers, and ceramic plates handmade by local artisans. Jennifer's children chased each other between the trees. Nathan strummed his guitar, softly testing the chords of a love song. Grandmother Sophie sat in the front row, holding a small lavender sprig she'd plucked that morning. "A symbol of peace," she said. I stood inside, looking out through the open doorway. My ceremony gown wasn't grand or glittering, just silk, simple and soft, catching the afternoon light. Claire, the local chef who had become a friend, pinned a sprig of lavender into my hair and whispered, "For good fortune and for truth." When I stepped outside, the breeze lifted the veil from my shoulders. The guests turned, faces glowing in the golden light. Grandmother rose first, her eyes bright. "There she is," she said softly. And for the first time, I believed her. There was no orchestra, no choreography, just Nathan's guitar, the rustle of vines, and the sound of people who had chosen to be there. As I walked down the aisle, I thought about every empty chair that had once represented absence. Birthdays forgotten, graduations unattended, silences mistaken for peace. But here every seat was filled. Every gaze met mine, unflinching. The officiant, a local friend of Claire's, spoke in melodic English. "Love is not measured by how many are invited, but by who shows up." The words sank deep. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't read from paper. My vows came out like breath. "To the ones who show up," I began, my voice steady. "This love is for you. For those who believed in me before I ever proved I was enough. For the ones who stayed when it wasn't convenient." Jennifer wiped her eyes. Grandmother nodded slowly, whispering, "That's my girl." When the ceremony ended, applause rose. Not loud, but warm, human, alive. The courtyard filled with laughter and the smell of herb butter and rosemary. Claire's kitchen doors swung open, carrying platters of handmade pasta and roasted vegetables. The lanterns above flickered on as the sky turned violet. It wasn't perfect. It was real. Halfway through dinner, Jennifer showed me her device. "They're talking about it already," she said, half laughing. Photos had begun circulating through the family group chats. Candles, the estate, the table glowing under the wisteria, grandmother laughing with Nathan's arm around her shoulder. Within hours, the images reached Charleston. At the ballroom, Maya was posing for her couple's portrait when one of the attendants gasped, scrolling through her device. "Wait, isn't that your family?" "They're in France." "What?" Maya frowned, snatching the device. On the screen was a photo of me and my husband standing beneath the Provençal sky, lanterns glowing behind us, our family smiling around the table. Grandmother holding up her lavender sprig, Jennifer's children throwing petals. Maya froze. The photographer hesitated, lowering his camera. The murmur started soft at first, then spreading. "Isn't that Aunt Patricia and Uncle James? I thought they were supposed to be here." Mother leaned over Father's shoulder, eyes narrowing at the device. "What is this?" she whispered. Father's face drained of color. "It's Diana's ceremony." Maya's breath hitched. They went to hers. Mother didn't answer. The silence stretched louder than any outburst could have been. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. The band played on, trying to fill the tension, but even the music sounded hollow. When the officiant toasted to family unity, no one raised a glass. Back in Provence, laughter rippled through the courtyard as Claire poured wine into glasses and said, "Eat, drink, and remember why you came." Grandmother leaned across the table and took my hand. "I've waited a long time to see this, Diana," she said. "This is what family was supposed to look like." The night deepened into gold and violet. Someone started a slow song, and guests began to dance barefoot on the stone floor. For a moment, I stepped away, walking toward the lavender grove. The air smelled of wood smoke and herbs. The estate behind me glowed with life. My device buzzed on the table. Messages, missed calls, unread voicemails. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. In Charleston, Mother's voice trembled as she called again, this time leaving a message. "Diana, how could you do this to us? Everyone's talking about it. We looked like fools." I listened to it the next morning, sipping coffee under the same lavender tree where I'd said my vows. The sun was rising, turning the hills amber. I hit play once more, then deleted it. They thought humiliation was the punishment. It wasn't. The real consequence was realizing that I had moved on without needing their permission. The photos kept circulating online, shared by cousins, reposted by friends. The image of grandmother raising her lavender sprig became the quiet symbol of our reunion. No captions, no explanations, just truth. For years they had cropped me out of their pictures. This time I didn't need to fight for space in theirs. I had built my own frame and filled it with light. The week after the ceremonies, Provence fell quiet again. The lanterns were taken down. The laughter faded into memory, but the air still held the warmth of what we'd built. The long table stood empty now, scattered with dried petals and wine stains, proof that something real had happened there. One morning, as I was packing away the last of the decorations, my device rang. Mother. For a moment, I almost let it go to voicemail. But something inside me said, "Answer, not for them, for yourself." Her voice was shaky, defensive. "Diana, do you have any idea how embarrassed we were? Everyone at Maya's ceremony was talking about your little occasion in France. You made us look heartless." I took a slow breath, watching sunlight crawl across the floor. "I didn't make you look anyway, Mother," I said evenly. "I just gave people a chance to see the truth." There was silence on the line, then a trembling sigh. "You've always been so distant. We were just trying to keep peace." Before I could reply, another voice came through. Grandmother's. "Laura, that's enough," she said, firm but calm. "You spent years asking this girl to diminish herself for your comfort. Now she finally stood tall, and you're calling it cruelty." "No, my dear, that's freedom." Mother said nothing after that. The call ended quietly, like a door closing without a slam. I stepped outside, the lavender field swaying gently in the breeze. Claire came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Everything okay?" I smiled faintly. "Better than okay. It's finally quiet in all the right ways." She looked toward the long table and said softly, "Then rest, madame. You've earned peace." That evening, I set one last plate at the head of the table, the seat that had always been empty. I tied a small lavender ribbon around the chair and whispered, "For the girl who once waited to be chosen." The wind moved through the vines like a gentle sigh, and for the first time, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt free. Later, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, I poured a glass of wine and thought of grandmother's words. Love isn't management, it's showing up. She was right. You don't need to fight for a seat at someone else's table. Build your own, and the right people will find their way to it. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes the quietest revenge is peace. Hit subscribe for more stories like this.